when we do get going. Appreciate you all being here, and everybody is welcome to contribute to the meeting's discussion tonight. All we're going to do is ask you to, when the time is appropriate, raise your hand, and you'll be acknowledged. Come on up to the dais there and give us your name, your address, and keep your comments to about 3 minutes, please, so that we can move on.
Me either. And then double click on today's date.
There's nothing there.
Why is there nothing there?
I have no idea.
Katie, do you, oh, wait, click on that. That's the
That one,
now,
yeah.
right, double click. And then start meeting. All we do is just click always allow and open. Here we go. Got everybody there?
Looks like we have liftoff.
So now Pat and Lisa need to try to get in?
They're sure,
Oh,
they're
yeah,
there.
okay.
They should be there, yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay, looks like we're ready to rock and roll here. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. I will call this meeting of the Economic Development Committee to order for Tuesday, January 5. Record will show that we have 3 members in council chambers and 2 visiting us via WebEx, so all are in attendance. First order of business on our agenda tonight is approval of the minutes from our December 1st meeting. Do I have a motion to approve? I have that from McElhenney. Do I have a second? I have a second from Killian. Thank you. Any changes or questions on the minutes? Hearing none. All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? None are. Thank you. Okay, we're going to have some changes to the agenda as it's been issued here tonight. Item number 2, the presentation from McDevco, we will have to put on the table to a future meeting because representative could not be here with us tonight. Item number 3, the discussion on Thomas Street parcels. We're going to move that down after what is now called discussion on concept of community land trusts. So our next item of business is going to be discussion and possible action on the issuance of a request for proposal, RFP, for lots 6, 7, and 8 in the north zone of River Life. Sean, would you like to take a lead off on that?
All right, is this working? Yeah, great. This is in the River Life, the North District is the area north of Stinchfield Creek and between the south of the Wausau Water WOW development. And there's 3 lots that are there that we identify as lots 6, 7, and 8. There's been some additional interest from developers to pursue those lots, and tonight we're requesting that the committee consider and approve issuing an RFP, a request for proposal for those lots. There's a copy of the request for proposal, a draft form of it that was included within the packet, and I'm anxious to answer any questions that the committee may have about the potential development, or I'm sorry, not the potential development there, but any of the potential for developer interest, and any questions on the proposed RFP or additions that you think would be prudent.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Committee, any questions on what's been proposed so far? Has it been all verbiage included in this document, in the RFP, to reflect any past issues, environmental or geologic?
There isn't at this point, and we had a conversation earlier. That's something we certainly can include to reference. There had been both phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 environmental reports done on those properties, and then some remediation work that was conducted, and the city has all of those records going back, and we can certainly make reference to those and then make reference to the fact that all of those records are available to prospective developers.
I think just to plant that seed of, interest so that they know that there's information available. Some of it can be pretty voluminous, so you wouldn't put it in the RFP necessarily, except you would share it with interested parties.
Okay.
So, okay, anything else from the committee? Mr. Killian?
I'll make a motion to approve the issuance of the RFP time.
Okay, thank you. Alder Rasmussen has made a motion to approve. Just before we get into further discussion, could I have a second, please? I have a second from McElhenney. Alder Killian.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question I think is going to apply to all development-related activities that the city looks at or participates in the foreseeable future. I've heard, I guess, questions and concerns about the influence of the supply chain issues and costs during this pandemic. And overall, do we have kind of an estimate or an assumption of what these external influences may do to costs and timing and logistics and so forth?
Well, me not being an expert on the subject, but just looking at it probably in terms of experience and common sense, I'm thinking that we find that every year the cost of building things goes up regardless. And at the end of this pandemic situation, when things ramp up, demand is going to be probably pretty high. So again, that's not going to lower prices. It's going to keep them steady or raise them, I'm sure, to meet demand. So going forward, you don't really see or anticipate, a dip in construction costs as far as I could imagine. Anybody else have a,
Alderperson Rasmussen had her hand
I'm sorry?
up. Alderperson Rasmussen has her hand up.
Okay, very good. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I think that if we go ahead now and issue that RFP, we certainly.
Could you please hold while we try to turn up your volume? Alder, can you turn up that volume? Kind of hard to hear you. Could you give us a testing, please, Alder?
Yep, can you hear me now?
Yes, it's some better, but not much. Maybe you have to really snug up to your iPad there, but,
I'm pretty close to it now. So anyway, I think that, given the current economic condition, we still can release that RFP. We can certainly scale the timing of the project if we need to with the proposers. But
Yeah.
I think that there's no better time for us to go out and see what's out there, for those properties. Obviously, the sooner we can develop them and get them on the tax rolls, that's better for us.
Mhm.
And, from a cost standpoint, depending on what shakes out of the RFP, we'll have to work with that either way. So I think we
Right.
should go forward on it.
right. Do we have, what is the time frame on the RFP, Sean?
There's no time frame listed at this point, I guess, looking for some guidance and direction. This developer that's expressed some interest has been, working with the city for, I'd say, 4 months now. And I mean, they're interested in moving forward. I don't know if they were going to possibly have a representative attending tonight, but it doesn't look like that's the case. At any rate, they're interested in
Okay.
moving forward. And I hope to address Alderperson Killian's question before. Again, I'm no expert either, but what I've been hearing from a lot of the construction contractors in the area is that a lot of these issues with materials pricing are really focused primarily on wood products, and that there isn't as much of an impact on some of the other materials that are non-wood. That being said, there's also some concern from the industry that this may be a new normal for those products, that while it had been a supply chain issue previously, it may be a new structure of how that particular market is going forward. I think that's only supposition by some of those folks, but certainly there's a concern out there within the industry that that's a possibility.
Well, for a due date for submissions, are we, is our normal like a 90-day turnaround?
I think they've been, in the time I've been here, they've been anywhere from 60 to 90 days.
Okay,
I think 60 days has been the
okay.
standard.
Thoughts from the committee on due date? 60, Alder Rasmussen?
60.
Okay, very good. Anybody else? All right. I have, Alder Killian, go ahead.
Yes. One more additional brief question. I see it's likely going to be mixed use, and if it incorporates any residential components, do we know roughly the price point of what those units will be or
Don't know
target?
anything at this point. No. Nothing's come across me or anything, so.
Thank you.
I saw a hand in the audience. Yes, Alder Ryan.
Deborah Ryan, 702 Elm Street. I guess I had a question of what would be the standard lot size? I know like for my home, it's 60 by 100, but I don't think that's standard. And I know in changes that we made to ordinances that we were kind of letting lot size just be about anything. But at a certain point, when you're having higher priced homes along the river, and I know up north in Riverview, people have their own boat access, and is that going to be possible, or you're dealing with the River's Edge Trail and then wanting to have a place to have a boat slip? Is that part of being considered as part of this proposal?
There is no proposal per se that we've looked at. What we're looking at is, the two or the three large lots in River Life. And, I'm assuming those are going to be, large buildings, multi-use nature. But that's all I know about it, so,
Oh, I thought it was going to be single-family homes.
yeah, not in River Life, no.
Okay. So how many homes are expected on each lot then?
We're
And-
not talking about homes. This is down in River Life. This is a mixed use, probably large buildings. It could be a mix of residents, commercial, retail, you name it.
Okay. So have you discussed this with the fire department about what the access would be and
There's
if
nothing
there's
to
enough
discuss yet
parking
because
spots?
we have not seen anything yet.
Can I just interrupt for a second?
Sure, go ahead.
I think you might be on the Thomas Street issue.
No.
No?
Oh,
Okay.
I just thought if this is going to be up north on the river, I would think people would want boat slips. And how would they be able to access that? Is that part of the proposal? Is the city considering that? Because I know there's only so many limited that are in the Riverview area that have that,
We won't know any of that till we see a response.
but you're not putting any language in about those issues.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right, anything further from the committee? We've had a motion and a second on the issue. And seeing nothing else, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? And none are. Thank you. Okay. We will move on. Next item of business is discussion on concept of community land trusts. Alder Killian, would you like to take the lead on this?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, there is quite a bit of information in the packet giving an overview of this concept. In my understanding, it's been applied and leveraged in other municipalities with a good deal of success, some of those operating for decades, those trusts. And I'd like to just, without going into a very long summary of what this concept includes, I'd like to hit some of the unique points of a community land trust and how that may be relevant and useful to our community. So, unlike some other affordable housing models and approaches, once land is in a community land trust, it's essentially in there in perpetuity. So if one of these parcels was to include affordable housing, that would essentially be affordable housing, not just for current Wausonians, but also their children and grandchildren and generations down the line. So it's really great in certain circumstances for generating affordable housing, but also there's a degree of protection for that housing and against displacement and gentrification. And I thought that this evening, as we discuss the Thomas Street proposal, that's particularly relevant given longstanding concerns in that part of town on the southwest side over displacement and gentrification issues. Another great component, in my opinion, about community land trusts is they really give, apparently they can be structured in different ways, but there sometimes is a hybrid mix of public and private participation. And however it's structured, it does seem to give a great deal of weight to citizen participation and residents' involvement and to some degree control over land uses and what happens with land in their community and neighborhood. And I think also that would be very positive. I think as a policy body, probably I and my colleagues, we would not be surprised, but I think we could be pleasantly surprised at just the strong interest from residents in being part of their planning and execution in their neighborhoods. And not to cast aspersions, say, on the development community, but often there are different needs and priorities from different stakeholders, and this would give a lot more control to regular folks as opposed to just looking at, say, revenue and profit margins. There's a brief video in the packet that I included, and I think that would be great for those here at home if they did want a little more detailed information on how this works. It's a rather painless, solid summary. And overall, what we see with these community land trusts is that the land itself is held onto by the trust, whereas the resident or potential resident purchases the home. And what this can do on the front end is create more affordable housing options when it's purchased, because the buyer is not paying for the land. And then depending on how a given trust structures their program, equity can be built and enjoyed by that owner, but you know, there are usually requirements and formulas so that really it's paid forward, and that the next buyer of that home enjoys also that affordable housing option, because some of what's been accrued and those financial benefits are passed on to them. So without going into maybe more minutia than what's necessary, I think that kind of gives an overview, and I think it'd be great if we could start this discussion in town and maybe see where it goes. The last thing I'll say right now is I had the pleasure of speaking to at least one community land trust in the country out east that had been apparently very successful over the decades, and it seems like there would be a willingness from that trust to speak to city members, perhaps community members, and kind of give us some insight into what they've done and how it's been successful. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you know, the nomenclature, Community Land Trust, was a new one on me, so I appreciate you bringing that forward and the information that you put together for us, too. It's a very interesting and a welcome concept. Of course, you know, the city has, as I mentioned to you earlier, a history of partnerships with, others like, Habitat for Humanity or whatnot for using city land, for affordable housing type projects. But this idea of this CLT seems to be something I think the city would benefit from looking into. I'd be interested in hearing from, the people that you mentioned to talk about, how they got started. What was their learning curve? How did they get rolling before they started, were able to, enact, their mission. That's really important stuff, and I'd like to look into that. Mayor, yes?
Yeah, I was going to let the committee talk before I kind of talked. I think this is a really cool idea. And I did reach out to Madison to see if I could get any more information. Obviously, it was kind of quick turnaround, so I don't have anything from them. But I do want to learn more. I am curious, since we're talking about the structure of this, it does seem like it's an outside organization that would do this. What is I guess I'm curious about how the the public portion of it, the government, like what is the intention for Wausau? And those were the kind of questions I wanted to talk to Madison about. But just curious if you had insights anywhere.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor. And not specifically within the state, and that's why I think your idea of talking to the Madison outfit would be a great one, because I think that a lot of the challenges and opportunities, because they're in the same state with perhaps some state regulations and so forth, I think they could really shed some light on those things. But in my research, I did find that, and it's similar to perhaps what the city has done in what they've deemed some of their, quote, public-private partnerships, is like the city of Austin, for example. They had remnant parcels or open lots owned by the city, and I know in Austin and likely others, that's a way that the municipality had been involved, is to, I'm not sure if they just helped shepherd this land or if they were involved directly, but it does look like there have been cases where municipal land was owned and eventually transformed into something like this.
Yeah, I'm sure that, the city's role, aside from, giving the land to the CLT, could revolve around things that have to do with infrastructure or environment, things that, logistics of the project that might become something that is more of a substantial partnership rather than just, here's the land, go do your thing. So, I think it'd be on a project-by-project basis how that might flesh out. But it's a good point, because, processes need to be in place, so, sure, go ahead.
Sorry, I also don't want to put Tammy on the spot, but I see that she is on this call. And I know that we have some CDA some projects that I think she's worked on, where we actually are where we help out. So I don't know, Tammy, if it makes sense for her to just talk a little bit about what we do as a city.
Sure, Tammy Stratz, would you be able to
I'm
help
sorry,
us out here?
I didn't plan this, so sorry to put you on the spot.
Sure. Sorry, it took me a while to get my stuff moving again. I'm not, overly familiar with the land trusts and how they operate. We've worked with other organizations in the past, nonprofits that were housing component to help with affordable housing. One of them was the Wausau Area Housing Development Corp. They received federal funds and actually bought a couple of duplexes. We helped them with funds to renovate them, and then they were the landlord and kept the rents low. They received federal funds to build, I think it was 6 units on Wausau Street many years ago. And then they ended up becoming defunct because they couldn't raise the money they needed to, and it was more volunteerism, and becoming a volunteer landlord doesn't work very well. So they pretty much sold their duplexes and donated the Wausau Street one to the Community Development Authority so that they could continue to run it. There's also what's called CHODOs, which is stands for Community Housing Development Organizations, and we have several of those around the state. Wausau used to have a couple of them. It's a mechanism of which they can receive federal funds to do housing projects. I think the problem with Wausau is we don't have a lot of money. We're not the Madisons, we're not the Milwaukee, so we don't get the federal funds needed to be able to do big projects. So the land trust thing, it interests me because I'm curious to see how they make it work. So I don't know what other information I can provide.
Very good, appreciate it. Alder Rasmussen had her hand up, go ahead.
Yep, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, still a little quiet.
I'm still, oh man, I'm never quiet. What's up with that? Anyway, so I also would like to know a little more about this. I think that there's probably a place for it in Wausau, but I think that much like what we say about tax increment financing, this is probably a tool that we need to use when it's appropriate and use cautiously. Because essentially what this does is it locks down a land use forever. And it could very well, and is intended to stop an area from evolving. And so think of all of the areas where we have had to take possession of properties and raise them and build new properties because there was no interest from the private sector in those properties. And so, you know, while I think that we need to know a little more, and I would like to know really where the CDA fits in this. You know, I think there needs to be a nonprofit arm that manages it, obviously, but the municipality isn't that arm, I don't think. I mean, we cannot afford to, out of our coffers, on a perpetual basis, subsidize entire areas. And so improving an area, which we do all the time, I don't think that should be considered gentrification. There are times that you need to refresh and renew an area where the private sector will not. And, you know, I think that there's a lot of affordable housing initiatives out there that we can work with that maybe are less restrictive. Because if you know, take possession of a large land tract and you essentially preempt that from ever reaching its highest and best use potentially, from a growth standpoint, you could really tie your hands if you have too much land mass reserved for that purpose. So I think we need to know more, but I think we also need to be cautious with how much and where we use it.
Do you see this more as something that is appropriate in sort of infill projects in established neighborhoods rather than, you know, a large tract? Anybody have a thought on that? Go ahead, Alder Killian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and you know, I think this is a healthy discussion with some good points and questions raised, and I think when this comes up the next time, it might be good, and perhaps after we talk with these trusts, because I think there's some confusion at certain levels about how these work in terms of investment. And really, it's not a perpetual investment or subsidy that would occur. It would really be on the front end mainly, and that doesn't necessarily have to come from a public entity. It can come from private entities as well. You know, there are foundations and benevolent groups in town, we're told, that do such things. So really, we're looking at more of a one-off financial investment at the front end, and then we would be talking about buyers who have mortgages and who have to qualify for those mortgages, and really a typical housing scenario other than the land would be continued to be held from the trust. And then the restrictive portion, that's very much an intentional concerted component, and it's not always the case, not with government or the private sector, but unfortunately what we see is that sometimes what residents in particular neighborhoods may need, especially low wealth, diverse neighborhoods, and what developers may see as most beneficial, that being namely money and as much of it as possible, that those don't always keep close company. So this would be intentionally restrictive, and I think Thomas Street is a prime case study, and you know, people had different views on that, but I think we could and we can provide protections that are needed. So that restrictive portion is intentional, and I'm guessing it could be set up in a reasonable way so that should there be a very good reason or an urgent reason to take certain properties out of the trust, that could be put into the kind of founding documents. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Anything else from the committee on this? Other than the fact that, you know, we do want to move forward with researching and learning more about, you know, from the outfit you talked and just whatever other sources we can find. Sure,
Just
Mayor?
so I might just, from this committee's wishes, what are the wishes when it comes to city staff? I want to make sure that we're, like, should we dive in and maybe come up with a presentation? How do you want to handle this? What information do you want?
At some point, I imagine that's the case, but right now, why not have, you know, follow-up, and with this committee, you know, with, you know, anything, you know, from the group out back east that you mentioned, or any other source, to kind of get down into a bit more nitty-gritty on it.
Okay.
I'm particularly interested in, case studies of how they got rolling, that they don't just come out of thin air. I mean, they're not floating out there for us to say, hey, come on in, They have to come from somewhere. That partnership has to be, formulated from interested parties and whatnot, and whether it's foundations or philanthropists, you name it. So, I mean, how do these things work? Particularly, when you look at a market like ours versus, larger markets and whatnot. So there are some issues to plow through, but to me, a very worthy concept to pursue. So I look forward to learning more about it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on. So what was item 3 will now become our current item. Discussion and possible action on the proposal received for the Thomas Street Phase 2 remnant parcel housing development request for proposal, RFP. Sean, you want to kick it off?
This was a request for proposal that the Economic Development Committee had asked us to put out in October of this year. That RFP had gone out seeking builders for single-family homes on 6 parcels that the city owns on East Thomas Street, the 100 block of East Thomas Street. There was one proposal that was received as of the deadline, and that was provided in your packets for you. The proposer is Tyler Knutson Construction of Wausau. They are proposing to purchase each of those 6 properties for $7,500 each. That's a total of $45,000 for the 6 parcels. On those properties, they're proposing 6 single-family homes, each about 1,400 square feet in size, each 2 stories. They're proposing to build those in 3 phases of 2 homes each over the course of about a year, from May of 2020 to May of 2021. As I said, they provided some renderings of the homes within the packet, as well as some floor plans. And I believe a representative from Tyler Knutson Construction is, the 2 of them are here tonight to address your questions and provide any additional presentation that may be necessary.
Evening, gentlemen. I mean, you're welcome to come up to do a preliminary, or if you want to sit and wait to answer questions, it's up to you. What would you like to do?
We can just answer questions.
Just wait for questions?
Yeah.
Fine, okay. Well, thank you for joining us, and we'll see how it goes, okay? Alder McElhenney.
Thanks. I just have a question in the packet. I am confused about I think it's from staff, about the estimated tax base of 12,000. That doesn't make sense to me. That seems low.
That was based on the rate of, I believe is 970, the mill rate of 970 that was set in 2020, is that correct?
We don't have a mill rate of 920.
Okay.
I mean, because if you're having 6 houses at 220,000, that isn't 12,000, right?
Right.
No, that's not. Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because I looked at that and I know what I pay.
Sure. Yeah.
It looks like Mary Ann's trying to do some quick calculations.
Okay, great, Mary Ann, thank you.
Oh, I wasn't done
Oh,
with you.
I'm sorry. Okay, I apologize.
Sorry. What was the question?
Okay, what Alder McElhenney made reference to was our packet gives an estimated tax of $12,000 and some dollars across these 6 properties, and she's saying there's no way that's possible if these are $200,000 or $220,000 houses, and was this just some misinformation, and how might you help us with that?
Oh, okay. So, I heard city tax. So, the city's tax rate is different than the county's.
Sure.
Right.
So, or the total. Are you wanting the full taxes or?
I guess as it applies to the city.
Okay.
So we're talking about $2,000 per house?
$1,800 parcel then, about, give or take.
Okay, all right, well then that computes, I suppose, because we haven't factored in the county and the school. All right, more from the committee, please. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. Um, This proposal, I was glad to see this one come forward. You know, we had in the past, the proposal that we had from Edifix, which was worth considerably more money and more tax, also brought us a higher density of population and vehicular traffic, which was of concern to the neighbors. This, though, we've talked about not wanting to give land away. They're buying it at a fair price. And we have talked about the fact that, you know, we don't always want to be the fund source, and this one is not seeking city participation. So the fact that you could erect 6 single-family homes, sell the lots, and derive a realistic tax base from it, I think this plan is a win-win, and I would like to see us move this forward and get it going. One thing we have to remember with this corridor is that tax increment financing was used along this corridor, and so to offset that use, we should be generating new and higher tax base. And so this plan would achieve that without bringing in high-density housing like we saw in that first proposal. So with that, I would make a motion that we accept this plan and move it forward.
Thank you. Do I have a second on the committee? I have a second from McElhenney. Further discussion? Alder Killian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to be speaking a little more tonight, I suppose, than usual, just because this is in my district and a very important topic and consideration in that area and the district at large. I'd like to first start off by saying thank you to the economic development staff for their hard work on this. I know there's been a pivot from upscale townhomes and perhaps multi-units to single-family homes. That's what the community asked for, one component. So I know really anytime Thomas Street comes up, there's kind of a fight or flight response in terms of policy. It's a very complex area with a complex history. First and foremost, and this was incidental, I'm sure, and not intentional, but this packet came out over the holidays, and this meeting is really just a couple days out from the new year and not long after Christmas. So once we have our environmental justice and participation process codified and solidified, I think as a rule of thumb, particularly in a low-income diverse area, we should never put an important controversial item this close to the holidays with this little lead time for residents to digest the proposal and respond to it. And so I just right out of the gate say that I would like that appropriate time to interface with my constituents, and I would like to hold a public meeting, likely maybe virtually due to the pandemic, so that we can continue this process of participation that really, I think, set us in a positive direction. And so that being said, that is one request of mine. And I think when I look at this, the feedback, the main thrust of the feedback that I have received and observed, including online, has really prioritized 2 components. And like I said, I think pivoting to single-family homes was a very positive, good idea and desired by the community. But I think the second step, which will, be a requirement for success here, is going to be making sure that there's appropriate affordability, if possible. I'll talk about that a little bit. But secondly, safety considerations, specifically environmental safety. And I think the safety component is probably going to be a little easier to address because from what I've heard from Mr. Lindman, there were some samples already taken on some of these properties, and even in some of them, the removal of maybe 6 inches of soil during the project. So I know there's been some measures taken, but I am receiving a good deal of feedback that just given the area, we really need to make sure those bases are covered for both safety and any cost or liability issues. But on the affordability side, and I think it's not always a sexy or fun endeavor, but I think we need to look at the history of that area as well as the data behind it in terms of the income makeup, people of color, and ask ourselves the question, particularly with the recent past, is this an appropriate fit and price point for single-family homes on the street? And certainly, this has been a challenge of the city for decades, and I think the public and city government realizes just what an urgent need it is, and I'm not here to point a finger at policies or people who have overseen them, but there are things I'm very poor at. For example, I'm kind of mechanically incompetent, but in my background, there are two things, and I think they serve as good analogies. One would be martial arts, and the other would be marketing. And in both cases, an integrated approach is very important. If you look at, say, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, by taking what works and leaving what doesn't work on the table, you really end up with a much more effective outcome. The same goes for business and marketing, looking at integrated marketing. By making sure that everything is used and complements each other and is exhausted, you really end up with a much more appealing result than if something is used in an isolated way over and over again. I think that's where we're at with the Wausau affordable housing issue. People have tried and tried hard, but unfortunately it's been abortive. And city government has verbalized that they know this is a problem, that they want to do something about it, but I think it's going to take more than half measures and virtue signaling on this. So what I would like to see is in the vein of giving some time for residents to review this and participate. I think we need to slow this down and make sure that all the options have been exhausted, because, well, there may be some concern. People ask, what's affordable for the housing here? I mean, as we know, this is new construction, so what's affordable and what's realistic with new construction, those may be two different things. But I think there is a way here, and if I have the opportunity just to briefly inject this in a little bit, there are models that would result in single-family homes that would really come to a total monthly cost for the buyer with mortgage and costs of about $700 a month. And I'd at least like to look into these, and if a solution is not readily apparent, maybe dig into it with a task force on affordable housing of some kind. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, Alder Rasmussen? And I have another hand up from Alder Larson.
Thank you. I guess the question is what is our goal as an economic development committee? And our goal with the remnant parcels, with any remnant parcels, is to return them to the private sector to develop, and it's the private sector's job to figure out what they're going to build there and make it successful or not. And so I guess my question would be, obviously, us starting this process tonight isn't a final step, but we need to, we've done our project that we bought the land for. We need to return the rest of it to the private sector to find projects for. So there's a project here that's not asking us for any contribution other than to sell them the land at a fair price. I personally think if we can't, originally we didn't want high density housing, we wanted single family homes. We advertised for single family homes, now we have a proposal that's bringing single family homes. I don't know that it's our job as a committee to dictate the selling price of that home. It's up to the market to determine that. And if the housing market dictates that, those houses can support those prices, fine. If they can't, then sell them for less. But at the end of the day, we are responsible to return that property to a tax-paying status. And so whether we put a real estate sign on that parcel of land and let a realtor sell it, or whether we accept this project and and let the private sector build 6 homes, that really is all we have to do here. And, I wonder in my mind, as we manage this over and over, how many development projects are we going to let slip away? And this one is a sound proposal. and I'd like to see us move it forward. Now, if we are having all kinds of conversations about affordable housing and, WIDA grants and land trusts, we can have those conversations, and these parcels are not the only parcels in Wausau that would lend themselves to any sort of an effort like that. But we've done 2 RFPs on these parcels, and when we didn't like the first proposal, we went back for single-family homes. We have that in front of us, and I think as a committee, we should not keep moving the goalpost so that no proposal measures up. And so I think we need to go forward on this one. I mean, it doesn't get much better than what we have in front of us. And the private sector has come forward and offered to develop the property. I think we should let them. And our job here is to sell the land and let them do their thing.
Thank you, Alder. Alder McElhenney.
I guess I agree. I understand both sides of this, but again, I see a moving of the goalposts. I mean, we want single-family homes. Building is costly. It is costly. I can't, there was a discussion not long ago with council when council members wanted just to put signs up. Let's put real estate signs up on our open parcels and let them do their thing. We're going to get out of this. You can't have it both ways. Either we're going to let the market determine what they are, or we're going to say, no, I want to micromanage everything. You can't, our messages are mixed continually. And like I said before, this is my first time in ED, and it just seems like I can't figure out what the strategic plan is in this committee because we keep going back and forth. I'm supporting this because the market is, you go around and look, I talk to realtors at least once a week for years, and I keep track of market prices. The reason our assessments went up so high is because houses were selling very quickly, and they still sell very quickly, and I've had realtors saying they're selling higher than they really even should. So we need housing, okay? That's what we need. They're saying we need housing. Now, I agree with low affordable housing. We need that, but we can't micromanage. We have to have a plan to do that. Every time, I agree with Alder Rasmussen. Every time a plan comes up, we switched this once. We said, okay, we want single family. Now we don't want these. We want smaller single family. We have to, I want the people that build these houses to make a livable wage. I'm not going to ask people to come in and take a hit, when we have said, please give us your affordable housing. I think these are affordable, because go check on the price of a new house. It's pricey. I think that there's 2 divergent discussions here. And why do they always clink in this committee? Why can't we, Alder Killian brought up, maybe we should have some type of a committee or task force on affordable housing. Let's do that. But let's not mix it up with after we put out RFP after RFP and then keep moving, because I do agree that we're going to get outside forces are going to say, to hell with it. I'm not going to answer any RFPs from Wausau anymore, because they ask for one thing, and this has been stated over and over by developers, and you don't have to like developers or whatever, but they have stated over and over that we don't know what you want. You say this, we put in something, no, we don't want that, then, oh, no, we don't want that. I worry about that. We have to be clear and concise. And if we were clear and concise that these were single-family homes at a lower square footage, which I think these are, I mean, that's a pretty small home, 1,300 square feet. So they did what we asked. If you wanted something different, we should have asked for that in October.
The thing is, in this case, and in all cases, I'll get to you, Alder Luss, I'm sorry. A developer is taking on risk when they're proposing to do a project. They're projecting out what they expect to sell for, or what they expect to rent for, et cetera. And they're basing that on their trust in their information on the marketplace. Our approximation right now on this particular proposal is that the developer is looking at about a 3% margin, between, not making any money and making some money on this proposal. There's very little wiggle room as far as that's concerned. This project, as Alder McElhenney, is sort of saying, that this is the result of public engagement and a desire for something different than what was originally proposed. It could come to when these houses are built and they're put on the market, the developer might find that they're having a hard time selling them at that desired, price point, and they might have to lower it some. That's just life. That's life for developers. That's life in the housing market. And, it's hard to predict. So I am supporting this at this point. And Alder Larson, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a property owner on this block here, I guess, first of all, I want to say thank you for your proposal, because for once, as this has been brought up, we're not giving away our land for $1, and you're not asking for a handout from the taxpayers, and I thank you for that. But that being said, once again, we're asked to turn our neighborhood into something it's not. You're going to put $200,000, $240,000 homes in a neighborhood where homes are valued at half that much. And what I'm also afraid of is what it will do to the neighborhood taxes. I mean, my taxes, I could sit here and tell you the ungodly amount that they value my house at. It went up $30,000 in 2.5 years, and my taxes went up 20% just in 1 year. And that's what I'm afraid is going to happen to this neighborhood if we allow these more expensive homes to go in there. They're going to all of a sudden reclassify the neighborhood to a higher grade or whatever, and the taxes will go sky high, and you'll be chasing these low to medium income people out of their homes with the taxes. And I can't at this point support it. Thank you.
Very good. Anything else from the committee? Oh, we have some hands up in the audience. I'm just going to, on the honor system, who was first? Come on up. Please just give your name, address, and keep your comment to 3 minutes, please.
I'll attempt that. My name is Ark Romine. I'm at 1211 South 10th Avenue here in Wausau. I'll give you a little bit of my background. I am a former Habitat for Humanity board member, also the president of Habitat for Humanity. I am not representing Habitat for Humanity. I've been off that board for over 3 years. I'm currently a commercial real estate broker here in the greater Wausau area, so I do have a feeling for developers and so on. I have not been in the residential aspect of it for over 13 years now. However, there's a couple of things I'd like to say. I agree with Alderman Killian that there possibly should be a task force to look at affordable housing within the community, whether it be looking at these 6 parcels going down through or the community as a whole. When I was on Habitat, I worked very closely with the Economic Development Office, with Tammy. I don't see her up there at the moment, but of acquiring lots and so on throughout the communities. And when I say communities, Weston, Wausau, Rothschild, and so on. But I do support that I believe the Economic Development Committee should take and look at affordable housing within our community here. One thing that we have, one thing that we had with Habitat, our homes were appraised. The last one that I remember of was in Rib Mountain, and we had to have it appraised before we could put a price onto it for mortgaging with the participating family. at $125,000, and that was brand new. And basically, that's a big chunk of money for a family that's under stress in their finances. However, there was no, within that mortgage, there was no interest being paid, so that's how Habitat picks that up. There's other organizations within the community, and I've spoken with, that would be willing to step up and help work with affordable housing as well, whether it be involving with the Veterans Association and others. I spoke with a member of the American Legion yesterday about this, and they said, yes, we would be helpful in coming in. I know there's a gentleman behind me that's a former treasurer of Habitat for Humanity, but he's not here for that. So, it's just that I know that he could support my numbers there and how we evaluated. But I do feel that there is a need. I'm glad I'm not sitting on this committee right now of trying to make that decision between accepting these gentlemen's proposal or and so on. The market will pay for itself there, but then again, the taxes are going to. So there's the taxes. Are the taxes going to reflect because of these homes being built? Is it going to bleed over into the rest of the community within the area? And that's one thing that I know as a realtor, that when I was in the residential side, a lot of people looked at Wausau, said I don't want to buy in Wausau because the taxes are too high, when I can go outside to someplace else and build just as good of a home. But again, I think I've been along my 3 minutes, but thank you very much.
Very good, thank you, I appreciate it. Please step up. Okay. Sure. Again,
name
name,
is-
address, and 3 minutes, please.
Sandy Couch, 802 Augusta Avenue. When preparing for tonight, I thought I'd be providing you with statistics to enlighten you on the desperate need for affordable housing on Thomas Street and in Wausau. I'm only going to give you one. 80% of single-family homes are headed by women, and out of those 80%, 30% live in poverty. I'm sure you already know all the rest of the numbers, so I'm not going to give you a bunch of statistics. Instead, I'll tell you a story of two single moms from Wausau, and for them, affordable housing is essential for survival. I am one of those single moms, and I have 2 adult disabled children. Sorry. My world was shattered when I fled my marriage and became a statistic. My college education, my hard work, and my planning did not prevent the events that led me to need affordable housing. I crossed paths with a local landlord whose compassion overrode his financial gains. I went from a renter to a homeowner because he offered me an interest-free 3-year loan to purchase a home below the assessed value. And I did it in 3 years. I will never forget the opportunity given to me and repay it back daily by being a good neighbor and a good citizen. Without this opportunity of affordable housing in a time I so desperately need it, my situation today would be dire. I Uber and Instacart to supplement my income as a caregiver. It makes up almost 1/3 of my income. To ensure the safety and good health of my son, I had to forego that extra income this year with the pandemic. If I had not been given the opportunity for affordable housing, I would have had to choose between housing and my son's health and well-being. A decision no parent should ever have to make. But in the city, parents do have to make those difficult decisions every day. My friend is also a caregiver and a single mom. She fled a relationship due to severe physical abuse 6 years ago. As a result, she has an eviction on her record. She cannot find affordable housing in the city. She cannot find a landlord who will look past her eviction from 6 years ago. She struggles to pay her rent each month. It takes most of her income to pay rent. What is left, she must figure out how to feed her 2 growing children and provide them with clothing. As a former teacher, I can tell you their nutrition is essential for success in school. There's nothing left for extras or emergencies in her household. At times, there's not enough for the essentials. Given the same opportunity I received for affordable housing through a program like Habitat for Humanity, her children will receive what they need to succeed in life and become productive community members. She, like myself, will strive to make her neighborhood and community a better place for all. Due to the time constraint, this is a greatly condensed version of our stories and the other stories of single moms in Wausau. Please choose compassion over money. In the long run, you will find it's a better investment ethically and financially in building a strong and balanced community. If you would like to hear a full version of our story, I'll be happy to share with anybody. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Alder Ryan, you had your hand up earlier?
Deborah Ryan, 702 Elm Street. I wanted to thank Ark for his comments. I had worked with him a number of years ago and helping in Habitat, and I was 5 years on the Family Selection Committee while working with Catholic Charities and doing HUD housing counseling. So I've known Tammy Strutz for over 20 years and had dealt with hundreds of families that were homeless or in low income and not knowing where to find. I don't know the specifics of this Thomas Street neighborhood, but I guess I consider it similar to my neighborhood in my just eyeballing. I think the majority of the homes that are not new are under $100,000. And so it just seems we're at the point of where is things going. Now, in my opinion, I think some of the newer homes are going to lose their value by tens of thousands of dollars because there's not enough other changes going on. And I do feel like your committee has a dilemma of what to do and how it's done. And I'm hoping as a committee of a whole, we will look at United Way data, look at what affordable housing is, look at the new data from the 2020 census, so we can better see, is about 50% housing needing to be affordable in the Wausau area, and what we can do about it. I am aware that Home Depot does do programs for Veterans Home and is looking for partners on that. I did talk to Habitat today. They're not ready to do anything per se on Thomas Street, and I guess I don't want us to just necessarily cram more housing and losing people's lots where they can have a playground or play in their yard or have their dog, so necessarily go to a zero lot line. But at a certain point, I could see even the Thomas Street being small homes with a central community center. So I think there's a number of different options, and that in certain neighborhoods where there's other lots available and building a $200,000 or $300,000 home in Riverview, I mean, yes, that sounds appropriate. It sounds appropriate in Forest Park. But in my opinion, in the Thomas Street neighborhood, it doesn't. So I do feel like you do have a dilemma, and that we're not necessarily saying being against the real estate taxes going up some, but at a certain point, we have a number of people that are living paycheck to paycheck. And in a study done over 5 years ago, that was done by the Housing Coalition here for the state, the average person would have to work 90 hours a week at minimum wage to afford a 2-bedroom house. And in this economy, how can you do that? Could you get the hours to do that? So I think we need to find more information. I'm hoping that you'll consider having maybe Pam Anderson from the Housing Coalition that was at US Bank. I believe she spoke about a year ago about maybe there's some other potential ways of looking at creative financing so to help people. But we are the hub for the county. We have public transportation. And where are poor people that are at minimum wage jobs or restaurant jobs going to live? They need a place to live. We don't want to put them in tents on the bank of the river. So I do think this is a dilemma for the council, and I'm hoping we can get more information and look for places that can be affordable. And for me, for my last real estate tax, I have a home that's valued at $80,000. It is 1,400 square feet, 100 years old. My insurance values it at $175,000, but my real estate taxes are at $80,000. So I love having a large 2-bedroom home, but instead of being a 3-bedroom, but at a 2-bedroom price. And I do think there's a number of people and also that looking at it from Mayberry, USA, we still need affordable housing. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Yes.
I'm Bruce Grau from 1115 North 10th Street, and I want to speak to the need for affordable housing in the context of COVID. In 26 days, the CDC moratorium is up for evictions. We're looking at up to over 75,000 Wisconsinites facing housing instability. And we know that housing instability leads to worsening unemployment, homelessness, and it spreads COVID. How well prepared is Wausau for this? Pre-COVID, we started with a poverty rate 50% higher than the state average and higher than Milwaukee across every racial group. Our median income is dropping. Our homelessness is increasing. Yet, when COVID CARE Act funds came to the city, only 30% of it went to people who needed it, people who were facing evictions. How long has it been since the city dedicated itself to providing successful permanent housing for low-income Wausonians? Well, we found out that most of these projects have become defunct. Yet, upscale development seems to be happening nonstop, essentially, for years on end. It's such a pivotal juncture when the threat to our basic needs for food, shelter, and work is unequal in our history. Is it really the time to look at housing for $220,000 when 50% of our people make under $42,000 a year? It's almost like a cruel pipe dream. I don't think Wausau can afford to continue poverty and income at these rates any longer. We need to commit the financial aid we get from the federal government to more of our needy people and our needy individuals and families in the community. And we need to develop and look into housing options for low-income Wausonians. Mr. Killian spoke of community land trusts, and they've shown a consistent, successful record. They've facilitated increased citizen participation in the community, and they've mitigated poverty on many levels. So I urge this committee and the city to take such action against poverty and inequality as a powerful weapon to mitigating the devastation of COVID. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Rasmussen, you had your hand up?
Thank you. Yeah. I guess I just have, I have a couple comments, and I think what I'd like us to do really is to focus the issue here, because the larger concept of affordable housing and the need for it is completely undisputed. We know that we need to do more on that end. But that issue is way larger than the agenda item we have tonight. And I agree with the task force. The mayor has the authority to form a task force anytime she wants, to study a particular issue and make recommendations. We have one going right now on homelessness. We have one going for the police. We have a number of them going, and they're producing results. So there's no reason that we can't have a task force, make recommendations on a larger scale and in a broader sense anytime we want. And so what we have in front of us as our agenda item is the private sector has responded to a request for proposal. They've offered to build us 6 single-family homes on land that we are trying to get rid of. Our committee's mission is not to engage in price fixing in the private housing market. That's not why we're here. And so we have a proposal that we have in front of us where we have to decide yes or no. We either want it or we do not. But, then we continue to sit on undeveloped land that remains off of the tax roll. So I would like to see us form that task force and push forward on some recommendations, that can get results. But those results can come whether or not these 6 parcels develop into these houses. They have to. We have to have a larger discussion about affordable housing in our community. And I think that we also have to be cautious when we assume that if you build 6 new houses, that every other house on the block is automatically going to increase in taxes. When we talk with our city assessor, he assesses property based on its current state and comparable homes. So if he assesses a brand new house and the house down the street is nowhere near that quality or size or vintage, those 2 houses are going to have different assessment values. Now, whether or not there's a positive effect to be had on a neighborhood when that neighborhood revitalizes, statistically that's probably true, but there's not a guarantee that every single house is going to automatically skyrocket in taxes just because a few new homes show up. So, I think that we shouldn't make that assumption, but we do need to focus tonight and make a decision on the motion that's on the floor so that our proposer has an answer tonight. And we need to decide what we're gonna do. Now, the housing market in our area, whether we like that or not, has evolved so that 200,000 is starting to be a middle market home. It's not a high-end home anymore. It was 30 years ago, a very high-end home. But the housing market has evolved to the point where 200 is a middle market now. And that's where I'd like to see us push forward and give Mr. Knutson an answer.
Very good, thank you. All right, now, what? Alder Peckham has his hand up. Go ahead, Pat.
Yes, thank you. I think the best thing would be if the city pursued both of these things separately. I think what happened with Thomas Street was that we put out an RFP last year and we said, we want to hear from anybody who wants to do anything in there that'll get this land on a tax base. Somebody came in, made a proposal that was worth a lot of money on tax base. The neighborhood said, well, we really don't want that. We want single-family homes. So we went back out and said single-family homes. I don't think we can now say, well, we don't want that kind of single-family home. I think we need to, take this one. It's a good proposal. As Alder Larson said, it has good qualities about it. And at the same time, I think that we need to realize, and I've come to this conclusion that over the last 2 terms on the city council, is that this low-income housing stuff is not going to happen by itself. The free market system, we've put out a number of requests for proposals, and pretty much all we're getting is the higher-end stuff. If we want this affordable housing thing to happen, and I believe we do, I think we need some kind of a task force. I think we need to involve the Community Development Authority. I think we look into this land trust thing. I think we, put our shoulder into that. And it's not going to be on these particular addresses on Thomas Street, but it can be elsewhere. And I think that approval of the proposal today would be prudent. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Mayor, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you. I'm thinking about this task force, and I think it's a great idea. I know that we have a group through United Way that has been working on some of this. They've been focused more on the homelessness side of things. But if it's the will of this body, and I know you're voting on this proposal tonight and not a task force, but I can maybe work with our team and put together, I'm not going to use the charter word because that's not what we use at the city, but put together a framework for this kind of a task force. I was just quickly Googling some other task forces. Pittsburgh is a really great one. They came up with a whole bunch of different recommendations and the actual policy actions that their council could take to get into that affordable housing area. So if that, I'll just take that as direction on my own, but maybe at the next meeting we can talk more about it. It could be an agenda item.
Very good, good discussion. Alder Killian?
Yes, I will have some comments, but I believe citizens did have their hands up, so if there are any remaining citizens who wanted to speak, just wanted to make sure before proceeding with my comments.
Okay, I don't see any hands up at this moment.
Fair enough.
Go ahead.
I'd like to reiterate, too, that, we talk is pretty cheap, especially in the economic development realm, but I think we need to live up to what we're telling the public. And the last few weeks and months, we've talked about environmental justice. What type of ethical government procedure pops this type of proposal in this type of area without any ability for the residents to digest it or talk it over with their representative in an appropriate way and given time to do so? I think a public meeting, it got us this far in the right direction, and that is, I think, very appropriate to ask, and I'm highly disappointed by this body's apparent attitude toward that. And I think also, when it comes to task force, what we're learning is that it seems a lot of the community doesn't want some top-down baked process when it comes to a task force or their neighborhoods. I think these should be more organic so that residents actually control more of the process and more of the objectives. Just as an example, I heard from a member of this homeless task force that they didn't care for the idea of wet shelters, not because they found it ineffective, because they were scared it might bring more homeless people to Wausau. I mean, so it's come to the point where we're actually, as a government, withholding services that are known to be effective simply because, there's some unfounded fear it's going to draw homeless.
You might be getting off topic.
I don't believe so, Mr. Chair.
I think you are, so.
Was a task force just brought up?
Right, but we're talking about this proposal.
But if I'm not mistaken, a task force was just brought up in discussion.
We're not voting on a task force tonight.
But apparently it was discussed.
You can feel free to talk to the mayor about this, but we're not voting on a task force tonight. So it's not an agenda item.
Mayor, may I respond to your task force comments?
I guess I'm not the chair of this meeting, so I would really prefer to not get in between here, but I guess what I said is that I would take this as kind of unofficial and I'd bring it back to you. But if that's not...
That's fair enough. Respectfully, as my constituents have been silenced, apparently I have been as well on this matter.
I'm sorry, who's been silenced?
Where is the public participation process, sir?
This is one element right here. And this is not the first time this has come to this committee. This wasn't popped out of left field. I mean, we've seen this before.
It seems inappropriate, in my opinion, to do this the first week right after Christmas.
Okay, that's fine. We are in a position to take action with a motion in a second. So, do you have comments on that?
I certainly do. Also in terms of what was brought up earlier about this being kind of micromanaged and choreographed, this committee, if I'm not mistaken, even dictated what was on the mural down by Wausau on the East River front. So really, when we talk about guiding processes in a way that benefit the community, certainly there's been more micromanagement on other issues. I think that's inconsistent. And so I would agree with the process of a task force and more public participation, but to create a task force or to look into this after the fact, that's kind of like throwing someone under a bus and then putting a stop sign up the next day. I think we need to look into this and try to implement some of these principles and desires in this particular situation. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Alder Herbst.
Dawn Herbst, 2809 Springdale Avenue. There are 11 districts that represent the city of Wausau. I cannot believe that 10 of them do not have the problems that District 3 has. It is unbelievable every time something comes up in District 3, it gets shot down, or all we hear is it hasn't been up to constituents. They haven't heard of it. My gosh, are these people sitting in their house with blindfolds on? Where are they? Tom, you seem to constantly want to shoot things down.
Point of
and
order,
I
the
don't
speaker
understand
is
it.
out of order.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr.
Gary Gissel, 319 Park Avenue, Wausau. I've been involved with a lot with the Thomas Street through the years. I've seen their neighborhood meetings, and when, you're right, when we ask for this housing that is before you this evening, but what does $250,000 houses look like in that neighborhood? You know, this is your decision that you'll have to make, but I question that. And I also question the fact that, is this the low price now that people are going to be developing housing in this city? If $250,000 is the minimum that people are going to have to build so that they make some money, what does that say for a lot of other people in this city that really cannot afford it? Looking at neighborhood meetings, especially in the Thomas Street, people came up and said, you know, we don't make that kind of money. And if you start to have it such that such high level of housing is in this city, where are the people that can't afford that housing going? They're going to go somewhere else. And I think that we have to be discussing the fact of a $250,000 house, not only in Thomas Street, but throughout the city, and how that is affecting our housing policy. You know, we've heard some good discussions already this evening about affordable housing, but what about middle income housing? What about people that are not making enough money to afford a $200,000 house? I think that we have to seriously think about, and you'll be making a decision with regard to that this evening, but I seriously question the trend that the city is going through, because that's all we're seeing. That's all we're seeing is very high levels of housing in the city. And I question that path that we're going down. I don't think that that's a middle income house. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, you know, obviously, the market drives things. There's just really no getting around that. I mean, you know, you're kind of a slave to the market. Although we are talking about taking steps outside of tonight's agenda item about looking at affordable housing initiatives. I think that's something that has to happen and it will happen, but it's not really what we're voting on tonight. So, Alder Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One thing I would like, these, if I'm read correct, these homes would not have basements, correct?
They would not, that was required in the RFP that you.
Okay, because they just built 4 homes on Sherman Street on the remnants that have been left there for probably 8 to 10 years. 3 of them didn't have basements, and I believe they were under $200,000, and when they were built, they were like that. So, thank you. So it can be done.
So, being that this just came up, I did bring with me tonight a copy of the RFP, and I highlighted some sections within there which are driving factors of this cost of the $220,000 average price that we came up with. So it was requested that the houses have to be either 1.5 or 2-story construction. So they do not have a basement, but they do have 2 stories. The price would be significantly reduced if it was requested that these houses be only 1 story. It also says that they need to have a 2-car garage, which drives up the price as well. And with that, did you have anything?
Yeah, I do. The size of the lots, being that these houses are on a 60 by 100 lot, they're gonna have to be, you know, the 2-story, 1.5 to 2-story construction that you've requested, due to the fact that the vastness of the house that was built on Sherman Street wouldn't necessarily fit the lot that is on this street and provide a yard for a family who's growing to be able to allow their kids to play out on it. Now, we're talking about, I heard somebody bring up that we're going to be packing the houses very close to the median right there. Well, there's going to be the alleyway to park in. There's going to be a yard base for children to play in. A family could fence off the yard. A family could, the way that the houses is designed is to have the patio slider right there off the kitchen. You can watch your family playing. You can keep eyes on your children. You know, this house is designed for a growing family. This house is designed to be suitable for somebody who is without children. You know, that this house is designed to have a master suite on the first floor for elderly people who would be, you know, inconvenienced by the use of a stairwell. I mean, we really tried to highlight a lot of things that were asked by your proposal, your request. And given the market with the COVID and the price increases and everything that's going on right now, we've got real estate printouts from places that are comparable to these homes that are right in the area, you know, that are the same footprint. We've got pictures of your neighborhood houses right here that show how these houses really fit in with the other houses that are right in the neighborhood. Building a place that's $80,000. Now, you know, I understand, but that's just not going to happen. New construction, you're not going to build an $80,000 house anymore. You're definitely not going to build an $80,000 house that's 1.5 or 2 stories tall with a 2-car garage and fit in any modern standard that's going on right now in the markets. These houses that we have printed off are flying off the shelves. They really are. People are loving them, they're buying them, and they're buying them. We've also got printouts with median household incomes. We brought our banker here today who writes loans for a living, and he has come prepared to explain if somebody has questions about what your household income would have to look like and how affordable these homes truly are in the Wausau area. You know, we really have done our research here, and we tried to answer what the city was requesting for your RFP. You know, we really did the best we could.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I could throw out there too, the city's Live It Up revolving loan program for house buyers, for down payment assistance is a revolving loan program that's been going for how many years now? 6, 7 years, something like that. Very successful, and it's helped a lot of people who might have had a harder time go ahead and make a home purchase. So, okay, Alder Killian.
Thank
you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for the proposers here. Feel free to step up.
Okay.
Thank you for your proposal and for answering these questions. I really appreciate it. One of my colleagues had mentioned that, and this was pre-COVID and pre-pandemic, that there had been some homes not too far away on Sherman Street that were kind of roughly the same square footage as these. And that home, let's take one of them, for example. It sold for $191,000. I think with the breakdown of the square footage, it was perhaps $153 per square foot. And this was pre-pandemic, but not long ago. So assuming that, and that was part of my rationale for asking Mr. Fitzgerald about the supply chain influences during the pandemic, assuming these prices would normalize and we were able to get closer to that $153 per square foot average that we saw on Sherman Street, would it be prohibitive to, say, lower that square footage at all to 1,100 square feet? Is the information you've researched, does that show that that may not be viable from a, say, financial standpoint, or it's not desired in the marketplace? Or if those prices were to normalize with supplies and so forth, would it be possible to reduce that square footage? Because by my calculations, just doing that would reduce the home cost by $52,000. So now you're into a price range that is into a more viable, realistic neighborhood price range. Could you please provide any insight into those topics?
I think there's a couple of questions here. First, I can definitely speak on the reduction of square footage. Okay, so we are proposing houses that have approximately 1,400 square feet. The room sizes right now are already adequate for queen size beds and families to live in. Okay, we've got a master suite. You know, if we reduce the square footage, we're reducing the room sizes, and we're making these places less desirable for your average consumer, especially being the footprint that we're trying to squeeze it into. Could we reduce the home square footage? Probably. Would it necessarily be a more desirable market feature? Maybe not. As far as the cost of the houses and...
So to go on cost, I know the Sherman Street ones came up a lot. And I think a more recent, since you said those were pre-pandemic, I just went through and I found a few properties. They were on, let me hold that, on Oriole Lane. And they are comparable houses to what was asked for in the request for proposal. And those all came in around $250,000. There's $254,900. That sold on 9/4 of 2020. There is 151811 Oriole Lane, that sold on 5/20/2020 for $247,000. There is 151883 Oriole Lane, which sold on 4/16 of 2020 for $254,000. There is 151783 Oriole Lane, which sold on 1/3 of 2020 for $249,000. And there's also 151909 Oriole Lane, which sold on 10/9 of 2020 for $194.
So would I be making a kind of a fair assessment here based on your answers that if those prices did normalize in the supply chain and square footage would be desired, that type of reduction desired by the marketplace, then it would indeed be viable. It would not be impossible based on what you're saying. Is that correct?
So we reached out to one of our main suppliers for building materials. I don't know if anybody knows Modern Builders, but the owner of that, his name is Tim Weitzling. And he had talked to us about this exact thing. We had brought up the pricing, you know, COVID levels are raising prices, but in his opinion, he does not think that those are going to come down. He sees this as the new norm. He says prices have increased at a higher rate than normal, but this seems to be the new norm. It's not just going to drop back down. It's just the way things are. Processes have had to change, and because of it, the prices have changed as well.
Thank you for your answers.
I saw another hand out there. Oh, yeah, please come forward. Name, address, in 3 minutes, please.
Yep. My name is Chris Norfleet, 221 Scott Street. The one thing I heard tonight, and Becky, council person McElhaney said that we have a constant bang going on, right? A push and pull, as you were. I watch you two individuals go at it somewhat here, and I don't know if that's a bad thing. I think some things are healthy for society. But what I heard you say that is kind of confusing to me is that it sounds like you guys have made some effort with bankers and community, to our city council and economic development to try to make a positive path, and that's good. But I can't help but to say that something is wrong, that we don't support Tom in this effort. And I see you roll your eyes.
No,
That's
I'm not
fine.
rolling my eyes. I'm kind of squinting because I'm wondering.
You did roll your eyes. Be honest. Have integrity.
I'm kind of, where have we not supported
That's
Tom?
fine. Because what I am saying is, if they had spent the same amount of time endearing themselves and getting to know this community as they did you guys, the way he suggested, maybe we wouldn't even be here. Maybe just hearing him say that he brought a banker here who would help people to understand how finance is working. But how do that help the community? It's nice that he told you guys, but it would be awesome if you had said, you know what, let's take this concept to the community. Let's say, hey, let's talk about who wants to purchase this home. It just seems unreasonable that we just want to keep saying the community should not participate on the front end. It's awesome. I agree. Sell the lot. $45,000 is better than $1. $100,000 would be better though, but that's not the point. Why are we not? Because this ain't brand new. You just went through this with the mall. You just went through this with the school board. This is not a brand new idea of that you keep clashing, right? So it's old. There's something about this that says these men would have found an awesome path in this community if there was already a mechanism in place to say, hey, you not only have to endear yourself to us as city, as the economic development, but you got to endear yourself to the community in which you want to develop in.
Thank you. Sir, you had your hand up too? Oh, just, all right.
Alder Ryan.
Alder Ryan.
Some, I guess, points to be made, about the homes that they're proposing. And, that they're 3-bedroom homes, 2.5 baths. And for a number of older homes, no. I got 1,400 square feet, I got 1.0 bath. So some of this is going to add up to additional costs and or the requirement of having a garage. It may be something, I know when my parents built their house back in the 50s, they built the garage afterwards, and I realized the garage may be $30,000, 20 by 20. So it kind of adds up on other things. But, and some of your comparables, I thought you said Oriole, which is Rib Mountain. So Rib Mountain, yeah, 200, 300, 400, yeah, I understand that. But that's not comparable. And I guess as some of the issue is, I think we need the assessors with the values in the neighborhood to kind of give a better perspective. And again, my gut tells me the majority of the homes in that area are under $100,000. So, and I know it wasn't, I feel like it's packed in because I have a corner lot and it's 60 by 100, and I know my lot is small in comparison to other lots. I can't vision more than 3 to 4 homes in my, just looking at it. So it seems that it's kind of tight. But we're also, I could see on that lot some tiny houses, and that seems like it would fit in better. But a lot of it is the issues of when are we gonna keep putting off and start looking at, we need more housing for our residents here that they can afford, and something that is not a slum landlord, and improving it. And I give the guys credit for coming and giving their information as such. But it's like we're taking two different paths, and that at some point, over 50% of our residents think we're talking crazy, and they cannot afford these more expensive homes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alder Killian, could I just address you just for a second? Because I was a little concerned about the inference that you're not being supported. I hope you don't feel that you're not being supported, in that, the committee has addressed the concept of the CLTs, have agreed the need for focus and a task force and a process going forward to address this as a matter of policy. So I hope you do feel supported in that. Whether or not that translates to this particular agenda item, I'm sorry that you might not feel supported there. But our intent is to support the need in the community. So I hope you understand that.
Thank you for those words, Mr. Chair. I'll keep this brief. I appreciate Mr. Norfleet and the others' care for this community. I think that is what their words suggest. And, as far as this, obviously there's support from the community, and that is really who I serve, and I thank you for your words. But I think if doing the right thing for my constituents and hometown, whether that brings me criticism or praise, I gladly accept either. Thank you.
All right, very good. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I guess when we look for a comparable example, I can give you a better one than Rib Mountain. In the early 2000s, a developer named Paul Ott bought a large empty field in my district, and we cut a road in there, and that subdivision now is the 1300 block of North 2nd Avenue. Every home around that subdivision is valued somewhere between $90,000 and $140,000, depending on the size of the house. A lot of them are 60, 70, 80 years old. Those lots that were subdivided in that cul-de-sac, new homes were built in there, and they have been one by one selling brand new homes in that cul-de-sac area. They fit in the neighborhood, they're brand new, and the price point on them is in that $200,000 neighborhood. The people that bought them stayed in them. They like their neighborhood, and the houses that surround them have not skyrocketed in their taxes, and those people have not been forced out, and they've not cleared out. So those two things can coexist, and they do coexist in my district. And District 7 is not an affluent district. We do not have a large percentage of high-end homes in our area. And so if anybody wants to take a drive up to District 7, which is everything east of Merrill Avenue to the river and north of Bridge Street, come on up there and take a look. We have average homes, we have average incomes. But the subdivision that was built on this field that became the 1300 block of North 2nd Avenue has been a success. And middle-class average families have bought those homes, and those homes are selling. And that's not Rib Mountain. So I think that this plan can work, and I think that the developer has done his due diligence, and that we owe him an answer, and that the private sector should be allowed to move forward, and we need to go ahead and sell these lots. So with that, I'd like to call the question. We've been debating over an hour.
We've had a very robust discussion, and I hope we are at the point now where we can take the action that has been motioned and seconded. Seeing no further hands, I ask the committee, all in favor of the agenda item, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
And it passes 4-1. Thank you, everybody, so much. And, going forward, we're going to have a lot of discussions about affordable housing and steps that we can take. This is not going to go away. And, I look forward to the challenge. We will not have a need for the closed session, which is on the agenda for this evening. Go right to number 8, updates. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Great, I just have a few quick updates for the committee for some things to look forward to. First off is the 1300 Cleveland Phase 2 environmental testing report. I know we indicated last month that that report was likely going to be available here in January. At this point, it's looking like it's likely going to be available in February. The report, my understanding from our Department of Public Works is that the report is completed. It's been forwarded to the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources so that they can provide their opinion on different remediation tactics for industrial use versus residential use versus park use versus commercial use. And so that the council and the committee will have a variety of considerations to look forward to rather than debating those things without any idea of what types of remedial activity might or might not be necessary for particular uses. So we'll look forward to that in February.
Sean, it was also my understanding, I might be wrong, or things might have changed in the last couple of weeks or so, but that there foreseeably could be the need for further testing based on what might be proposed for the property.
I don't know if that's the case or not.
Okay.
It very well could be, and I don't want to say now that it's not or
Okay.
it is, but, yeah.
I just wanted to say that when I had asked the DNR about this, they told me that property had been rezoned to residential, so that as it currently stands, I think the cleanup standards would be the higher non-industrial standards right now. But, whether that land use changes in the future, I'm not certain, but that is what I heard from the DNR.
Okay, yeah, and again, I think the intention of the Department of Public Works was to provide as many options to the council as possible, including any use of recreational space or parkland, whatever the case may be. I did want to report on the U.S. Economic Development Administration Economic Assistance Grant that the city applied for. The council probably heard a little bit about this during some of the conversations related to the Wausau Center Mall redevelopment. There was a measure that you had approved in November, just authorizing the potential for some funding if this grant's received. But this is a grant that is related to some coronavirus funding from the federal government that provides up to 80% federal matching funds. The grant itself is seeking $2.6 million to be used for some of the development of the infrastructure on the space where the mall currently sits, some of the sewer, water, storm sewer, and road curb and gutter costs. That application was for $2.6 million, and if the city's approved for it, would be $2.1 million from the federal government with a commitment for a little over $500,000 from the city. So we expect to hear more on that in early spring, I believe. And lastly, just wanted to give an update on the two proposals from Adafix Builds. These are what's referred to kind of as a blinker developments. He had responded to two different requests for proposals that the city put out. One was for the near north neighborhood on North 2nd Street. There was some discussion of that at the October 2020 Economic Development Committee meeting. The committee at the time had asked us to go back to Mr. Blinker and renegotiate some of the requests relative to the land sale price and the city participation request, and as well as a development proposal in the River Life area. I do want to report, we've continued to contact Mr. Blinker. We have not gotten a response from him it's been a little over 2 months at this point, and we've continued to reach out to him to move both of those projects forward. I do know that he's busy. We have given him the opportunity to participate in each of these meetings for the past couple of months, but just wanted to provide, I guess, this information in the way of an update to the committee.
Well, we certainly hope that, communication is reestablished, as soon so we can kind of, see how this vision is proceeding. Thank you. And that fulfills our agenda for the evening. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. I have one from Alder Killian. Do I have a second? I need a second. It's easy for you. You're already home. I have a second from McElhenney. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. 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 We are adjourned. Thank you.